Surely many of us still remember the name Circuit City, right? There was a time when it was a giant in the consumer electronics retail industry in the United States, a place where televisions, sound systems, and video game consoles were almost symbols of an entire generation. And yet, in the blink of an eye, that name disappeared completely, as if it had never existed. No big explosion, no grand farewell. Circuit City simply evaporated from the market. And the story of this collapse is not just a cold footnote in business textbooks. It is a real tragedy, full of drama, where decisions that once seemed reasonable gradually pushed an entire empire into the abyss. Just a few strategic mistakes, a bit of complacency, combined with the dizzying changes of the market, all of it came together to form a fatal blow. So, what really happened behind the doors of Circuit City? Before getting into the video, if you have any questions or topics you would like to know more about, please leave a comment below this video. And now, let us explore the article together. So first, let us go back in time together. Circuit City was one of the most prominent names in the history of consumer electronics retail in the United States, with a journey that began in the late 1940s. The company was founded in 1949 inches, Richmond, Virginia, by Samuel S. Wurtzel, an import-export merchant under its original name, Ward's Company. Wurtzel's business idea originated from a chance conversation at a barber shop when he learned that the first commercial television station in the southern United States was about to begin broadcasting, and he believed that local demand for television sets would surge. That very thought motivated him to open his first store, selling electronic products. Initially, the store sold only televisions and small household appliances, but it quickly expanded by acquiring many other stores in the region and grew into a larger retail chain. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Circuit City experienced a memorable golden era, transforming itself from a local electronics store chain into one of the largest consumer electronics retailers in the United States. By the late 1980s, Circuit City's revenue was growing rapidly. By 1987, total sales surpassed the $1 billion mark for the first time, driven by the booming demand for products such as VCRs, televisions, and audio equipment, a clear testament to the brand's strong appeal in the consumer electronics market at that time. By the end of the 1980s, the company owned more than 105 stores and continued to expand, with profits tripling in just 3 years during the mid-1980s. But nothing lasts forever. Now, let us turn back the files together to see exactly what happened. And first, try to imagine this. In 2008, within an extremely short period of time, the second largest electronics retail chain in the entire United States completely vanished. It was not a gradual decline, not a contraction to wait out difficult times, but a collapse that happened almost instantly. It is hard to believe that a name once so familiar, once a destination for millions of American consumers, Circuit City suddenly became nothing more than a faint memory, a ghost in the retail world. But the most frightening part of this story is not just the disappearance of a brand from the map. More than 30,000. This is not a dry statistic in a financial report. Behind that number lie the lives of more than 30,000 people, more than 30,000 families across the United States. All of those employees, from sales staff and technicians to store managers, suddenly lost their jobs with almost no time to prepare. For them, the collapse of Circuit City was not a business lesson, but a life-altering shock, and this is precisely the price paid and the most tragic consequence of the leadership's mistakes. Not a natural disaster, not an unavoidable external shock, but decisions made by the very people steering the ship. Decisions that seemed reasonable in the short term, yet gradually eroded the foundations of an entire empire in the long run. So, what is the biggest question here? How could the second largest electronics retailer in the United States disappear so easily? The answer lies here. This collapse did not come from a single event. It was the result of an entire chain of wrong decisions, made consecutively over many years. And the most terrifying part is this: every one of those mistakes was fatal. When just one link is weak, the whole system begins to shake. But when all the links break one by one, the only possible outcome is total collapse. Now, let us search for the answer together, and begin with the first mistake, also the most fatal mistake of Circuit City. This was a cost-cutting move that amounted to corporate suicide, a decision that appeared financially wise on the surface, but fundamentally destroyed the company's business model. The first major strategic mistake, and perhaps the most serious one, came from a choice that sounded entirely reasonable: laying off the most experienced employees to save costs. The number here was 3,400 people. Specifically, in 2007, Circuit City made a shocking decision that stunned the entire U.S. retail industry when it laid off 3,400 of its best sales employees. These were not ordinary workers. They were long-tenured employees with deep experience and thorough knowledge of every television, sound system, video game console, or computer sold in the store. And naturally, because of their experience and the value they brought, they were also the highest-paid employees. What must be emphasized here is this: this was not a typical round of layoffs due to temporary difficulties. This was a carefully calculated move with a clear intention aimed solely at cutting operating costs immediately, in order to make the financial statements look better in the short term and satisfy investors. On paper, the decision appeared logical. Lay off high-salary employees, replace them with lower-paid new hires, reduce costs, and boost short-term profits. At first glance, nothing seemed wrong, but the problem was that Circuit City traded away the most important thing. On one side were veteran employees, people who truly understood the products, could provide detailed advice to customers, explain the differences between models, and help buyers feel respected and confident. They were the very soul of the traditional electronics retail model, where in-store experience and the quality of consultation were the core competitive advantages. On the other side were newly hired employees with much lower wages, but almost no product knowledge, little sales experience, and insufficient ability to build relationships with customers. So what was the result? Customers walked into Circuit City stores and no longer received any value that differentiated the experience from shopping online or going to a competitor. Complex questions were not answered satisfactorily. Advice became superficial and mechanical. The shopping experience declined rapidly. Circuit City inadvertently destroyed its last remaining competitive advantage with its own hands, simply to obtain short-term cost savings. And ironically, the very decision that was considered financially smart became the first brick laid in the foundation of its eventual total collapse. When you cut away the people who create real value, sooner or later, the numbers on the financial statements will betray you. And then the story continues. Circuit City placed all its bets on short-term cost savings, and it must be admitted frankly that this was a gamble like one at a casino, and they lost everything. There was once an assessment that perfectly summed up this entire tragedy. This was corporate suicide, and that assessment was not exaggerated at all. By laying off their best people, the very faces of the brand, Circuit City willingly traded its greatest asset for a meager amount of short-term savings. On the accounting books, labor costs went down. But in reality, the core value of the business evaporated with every employee who left. Let us confront the issue directly. Circuit City was not merely selling televisions, washing machines, or sound systems. What it had truly been selling for decades was expertise and service quality. Veteran employees understood the products, understood customer needs, and knew how to advise buyers, so they felt confident, spending thousands of dollars. When they were laid off, Circuit City destroyed its own core competitive advantage. The stores were still there, the shelves were still fully stocked, but the soul was gone. The shopping experience became bland and hollow, no different from a retail warehouse lacking guidance. And while Circuit City was busy shooting itself in the foot from the inside, outside a fierce competitive storm was gathering. Competitors did not miss this golden opportunity. They moved quickly to step in and fill the void that Circuit City had just created for itself. This was the deadly pincer movement that trapped Circuit City in the middle with no way out. If customers cared only about the lowest price, where would they go? The answer is obvious: Walmart. If they wanted a better shopping experience, cleaner stores, well-trained staff, and in-depth advisory service, then Best Buy was the clear choice. And if customers wanted ultimate convenience, staying at home, clicking a button, and waiting for delivery at their door, then Amazon was number one. In that picture, Circuit City belonged nowhere. Not the cheapest, not the best, and not the most convenient. And that is the crux of the matter, and also the final verdict for Circuit City. They completely lost their identity, and with it, the reason to exist in the minds of customers. But it did not end there. Mistake piled upon mistake, and the next serious failure, also the third fatal blow, was Circuit City's dangerously slow response to the online game. They fell asleep in the face of the explosive rise of e-commerce, at a time when the entire retail world was entering a completely new era. While American consumers were becoming increasingly accustomed to staying at home, opening their computers, and ordering everything with just a few clicks, Circuit City remained trapped in outdated thinking. Physical stores were still the center of its entire business model. Their website existed merely for form's sake, weak, poorly built, with a cluttered interface, sparse product information, and frequent technical errors. Their logistics, warehousing, and delivery systems were outdated and fragmented, with no serious investment made to support online shopping. Circuit City's online shopping experience, if described in a single word, could only be called a disaster. Customers struggled to find products, ordering was slow, deliveries were delayed, and orders were even canceled. In a world where convenience and speed were increasingly becoming the standard, Circuit City effectively eliminated itself from the game. So what is the most ironic part of this story? Their direct competitor, Best Buy, did exactly the opposite, and did it well. Best Buy recognized early on that the future of retail did not lie solely in physical stores, but in the integration of online and offline. They invested heavily in their e-commerce platform, improved user experience, and leveraged their store network as pickup and return points. While Circuit City was still stuck in the past, Best Buy was steadily capturing customers in the digital space. However, there is one thing that must be clarified to avoid misunderstanding. The 2008 financial crisis was not the primary cause that killed Circuit City. It was neither the first bullet nor the fatal blade. That crisis was merely the final push, like giving a light shove to a tower that had already been weakened and cracked from within. If Circuit City had had a solid foundation and the right strategy, it could have survived the storm. But when a company has been weakened by prolonged strategic mistakes, even a gentle external push is enough to bring everything crashing down completely. And then, everything happened at a dizzying speed. In November 2008, Circuit City officially filed for bankruptcy protection, igniting a fragile hope that the company might still restructure and survive. But that hope quickly faded. Just a few short months later, in early 2009, the final decision was made: the complete liquidation of the company. All 567 stores across the United States shut down, one by one, lights off, shelves emptied. An empire that once dominated the consumer electronics retail industry literally collapsed in the blink of an eye, leaving the entire market in shock. From the ashes of Circuit City, 4 painful lessons can be drawn. Lesson 1. Never sacrifice your most valuable asset, your people, for short-term gains. Cost-cutting may temporarily save financial statements, but it destroys core capabilities. Lesson 2. A business must have a clear identity. Otherwise, it becomes invisible in customers' minds. Third, adapting to technology is a matter of survival, no longer an experimental choice. And finally, Lesson 4. Weak management, lack of vision, and inconsistency will sooner or later lead a business to irreversible failure. If you've watched the entire video, please support the team by giving it a like and sharing it. If there's any topic you'd like us to cover next, feel free to leave a comment below the video.